Well, it's Thursday, April 23rd. I'm Brittany Noble, and here's what's coming up on the breakdown. Florida cracks down on DEI. Governor Ron DeSantis signs a sweeping new law banning local funding for diversity programs and opening the door for lawsuits against cities and counties that support them. And today's Noble Spotlight highlights Kim Cresswell and how she's turning her personal experience into powerful support for families navigating autism. Plus, Mother's Day is coming up. We will tell you about a special journal, 30 Days of Prayers for Moms. The breakdown starts right now. Well, as always, we start with a breakdown of the headlines and stories that you need to know about from across Black America. A judge in Tazewell County Circuit Court has blocked Virginia from using new congressional maps just one day after the redistricting vote was passed. State Court Judge Jack Hurley issued this decision on Wednesday, halting the state's redistricting effort that was approved by Tuesday's vote. The setback for Democrats impacts the plan to redraw the state's congressional maps, potentially affecting as many as 4 House districts in favor of the GOP. The judge's order calls all votes for and against the referendum ineffective. The order prohibits state officials from certifying the results or taking any actions to implement the new maps approved by the state lawmakers. Hurley ruled that the referendum violated several clauses of the state constitution, specifically noting that it failed to comply with the 90-day public notice requirement. Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones will appear on Roland Martin Unfiltered tonight to discuss his plan to uphold the will of the people. That show begins at 6 p.m. Eastern. Well, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a new law on Wednesday that targets diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at the local level. The law prohibits city and county governments from funding or promoting DEI programs. DeSantis claims that these initiatives discriminate against white men. Additionally, the law allows residents to sue local governments for violations, and it could result in the removal of officials found to support DEI initiatives. This new law builds on a 2023 legislation that already barred public colleges and universities from spending money on DEI programs. Well, the federal government is considering intervention to prevent Spirit Airlines from shutting down. Recent reports indicate that officials may take a stake in the airline and offer up to $500 million. The support comes as rising fuel costs linked to the Iran conflict push the company to the edge of the collapse. Now, if Spirit fails, it would become the first major U.S. airline in 25 years to stop operations, all because of financial difficulties. Although the White House has not confirmed any talks, it states that it is monitoring the situation. Well, in Atlanta, an Emory University law student has been banned from campus for sending a series of racist and threatening emails directed at minority groups. University officials confirmed that the emails dating back to March contained racial slurs and language associated with white supremacist ideology. The Emory Black Law Student Association, along with several other student organizations, did issue a letter stating that the emails displayed racist, misogynistic, and transphobic ideology and represented an undeniable escalation from dehumanizing and offensive speech to assault. Well, a man associated with white supremacist organizations has pleaded guilty to setting a fire that destroyed an office at a historic social justice center for Black communities in Tennessee. Reagan Prater was arrested in April of 2025 in connection with the arson at the Highlander Research and Education Center that's located in Newmarket. Now, this center has hosted notable figures such as Rosa Parks, John Lewis, and Martin Luther King Jr. In addition to the arson charges, Prater has also pleaded guilty to attempting to assist the militant group Hezbollah, a foreign terrorist organization, by providing a list of individuals who may be affiliated with the government of Israel. The arrest occurred more than 6 years after the March 2019 fire, which caused damage exceeding $1.2 million. Prater's sentence is set for September 9th. That will be held in Knoxville. Eric Duran, a former New York City police officer convicted in a deadly use of force case, has been released from prison while he appeals his sentence. The 38-year-old Duran had been serving a 3 to 9 year sentence for manslaughter after he threw a cooler at a fleeing suspect, which led to the suspect's death. He was released from the Elmira Correctional Facility Monday after a judge granted him a $300,000 bond. His attorney argues that the conviction represents a miscarriage of justice. As a condition of his release, he has to surrender his passport. Also, rapper Tory Lanez is suing the California Department of Corrections for $100 million following an incident last year in which an inmate stabbed him multiple times. His lawsuit names the prison warden of the California Department of Corrections and approximately 50 correctional officers. On May 12, 2025, he was attacked by a fellow inmate who used a homemade shank to stab him 16 times. The lawsuit questions why no correctional staff was present during the attack and why the response was delayed, leaving him vulnerable to a full assault. And as a result of that attack, he suffered 2 collapsed lungs and had to be airlifted to the hospital. After his recovery, he was transferred to the California Men's Colony Prison and is currently serving a 10-year sentence for shooting rapper Megan Thee Stallion in the foot, that occurred on December of 2022. Well, Georgia Democratic U.S. Representative David Scott, who was the first Black man to chair the U.S. House Agriculture Committee, has passed away after nearly 50 years in elected office. Scott was first elected to the Georgia State Assembly in 1974 and went on to serve for more than 20 years in Congress, representing the Atlanta area. And throughout his tenure, he advocated for expanding healthcare, education, and support for veterans, including legislation to ease student debt for those serving in mental health roles. Congressman David Scott is survived by his wife, 2 daughters, and 2 grandchildren. He was 80 years old. Well, coming up next on The Breakdown, a high-stakes Supreme Court case could redefine who gets to be American. We're breaking down the fight over birthright citizenship next. Stay with us. And remember, for more news headlines and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day, visit the Black Star Network. We are your source for stories that matter to our community. We'll be right back.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
I'm Risa Colbert, and you're watching the Black Star Network.
Welcome back. Well, the nation is eagerly awaiting the Supreme Court's ruling on birthright citizenship, a decision that could redefine who is recognized as an American citizen. On his first day in office, President Donald Trump signed an executive order aimed at denying automatic citizenship to children born in the U.S. to parents without permanent legal status. In response to civil rights groups quickly filed lawsuits, all arguing that this move violates the 14th Amendment. Why are we frozen right now? Not quite sure, but give us a second to check on this, and we will be right back after the break. Stay with us.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Decade of love, joy, and power. Black Voters Matter is 10 years old, and we are just getting started. This is love with a purpose. This is Black joy in motion. This is unstoppable power. Across campuses, neighborhoods, and back roads, let's go. We show up not just to vote, but to be seen, to be heard, to belong. We ride together. We organize together. We remind each other that our voices matter because they always have. Black Voters Matter is about more than ballots. It's about housing and healthcare, clean water and living wages, education, reproductive freedom, and dignity. It's about turning pain into action, turning belief into movement, turning community into power. We don't wait to be invited. We bring the energy. We bring the love. We bring the people. Because when Black communities come together, we don't just survive, we thrive. This is how change happens. This is how history moves. We organize, we build, we win.
All right, we sincerely want to thank you for your patience with us today. And let's get on to our next story. On his first day of office, President Donald Trump signed an executive order aimed at denying automatic citizenship to children born in the United States to parents without permanent legal status. Now, in response, civil rights groups quickly filed lawsuits arguing that this move violates the 14th Amendment, which was ratified after the Civil War to guarantee citizenship to former slaves and their descendants. Joining us today on The Breakdown is Ariama Long. She's a political reporter for the New York Amsterdam News. Her latest article explores the historical roots of this case and its potential implications for Black communities all across the country. Ariama, we want to thank you for joining us today on The Breakdown.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing well. So tell us, back to this case. We've kind of laid out what this executive order aims to do, but your reporting goes so much further. Help us understand how this moment connects to the original purpose of the 14th Amendment.
So, to the issue of, immigration and citizenship, right? This all started in reaction to another court case, a Supreme Court case, Dred Scott court case back in 1857, I believe, where an enslaved individual was essentially fighting for his rights, and it was initially ruled that he was considered, property at the time. This kind of snowballed and led to what would be the Civil War, and started that whole thing. So now it's very interesting. That eventually led to the 14th Amendment. Now it's very interesting because that was supposed to guarantee right, the 14th Amendment for the babies or descendants of enslaved Africans. And no one has thought to really question it, because I think we've all come to understand that to be an American can look very differently. There are people of color, there are Black women like me, and then there are Asian Americans, there are people who have come here who are Italian, Polish, what have you. We all come to talk about this idea of being American very differently, but we all kind of understand innately what that would mean if the government changed that, right? Especially if we understand that a lot of people who have come here who are very prominent in our country from other countries. There are many people who are foreign born who have contributed to our society. And what does that look like in the future if we start to change that definition? All the greatness that we do have already, from 2026 on, we could be weeding out for ourselves. So I think the class action lawsuit was really important in response. It was able to put an injunction very specifically on that executive order. So the executive order says anyone born 2025 and on, at the moment, those children are safe, those people are safe, because the injunction caused that. But the court case could, whether it goes one way or another, then people would be in danger,
And so we're talking about, people from Caribbean, let's say from Africa, families who are building lives here. What happens if birthright citizenship is rolled back?
So then it's very interesting, because then, that would add to the political climate of, ICE and these raids that we're seeing happening in different states and different cities already. That would heighten it to include, children, people who are already in a very, very vulnerable state, because maybe they don't have one parent here, or maybe they're, on their own in the country. They would be maybe violently deported, like we've seen people. They would be, essentially hunted. And I don't think anybody would advocate for that, whether you agree with us or not. So I think that's what we're more so concerned about. And there are also over 500,000 DACA or dreamers who are young adults who have, some sort of legal status in the country, but are technically undocumented in the country. These are people that are in school, they're contributing to society, but they do have this questionable status. And who knows what happens to those individuals? They could be taken and deported as well. And like I said, I don't think that's anything that people truly want when you see it playing out in real time.
And Trump himself attended the opening arguments. Potentially hundreds of thousands of Black and brown immigrants could be denied as American citizens, but he was there for the opening arguments. Can you talk about that and how big of a deal it was?
Yeah, so apparently this was like the first time a sitting president had done that, right? I got to talk to senior counsel from the Legal Defense Fund who was actually in the courtroom at the time, and she kind of gave me her thoughts. She was like, well, she didn't really want to speculate on why he did that, but the idea is like to present a front of intimidation, to be there on the front lines and, look the judges in the face, essentially. She said that he sat a couple of rows in front. He came in, he kind of listened to his side argue the case, and then he left immediately after Supreme Court Justice Andrew Brown started asking her questions and remarks. So she thinks that it's very telling that he didn't stay the entire time, but it did create a very big spectacle, which I think is essentially what's the goal.
And from a legal standpoint, what are the key arguments that you're hearing from both sides? Okay, so from the Legal Defense Fund and the ACLU and the Asian Law Caucus Law, basically they're saying that there's already legal precedents. Obviously, it's fairly hard to just amend a constitution. Usually you'd have to call like a huge convention for Congress, or you'd have to have all of the states ratify an amendment, right? Which usually takes a very long time, as we've seen. It's not necessarily done by executive order. It has no precedent for being done by executive order. And then on top of that, they're saying this has two legal precedents. It was argued in 1898. Chinese Americans were arguing that they are right to be considered Americans, and it was ruled in their favor. And then later in 1940, it was also argued and ruled that all Native Americans as in people who are already here in their homeland, are now official U.S. citizens, right? Because they weren't necessarily considered that prior to that. So, in order for justices to overturn this, they'd have to go back and look at all these legal cases and essentially say, no, like this is not what they meant. And the lawyers that I spoke to don't think that that's not necessarily going to happen, because it would be difficult. On Trump's side, or on the opposition, they're saying that people who take advantage of America or coming to America and having their kids born here is something that they're worried about, right? They're taking resources, they're participating in birth tourism, which a lot of people don't believe is as widespread as they're making it out to be. But it is somewhat of an issue that I think, healthy, solid immigration reform could probably address, rather than changing a constitution, which it just seems like it's a lot harder, because it's a snowball, like I said, and could affect a lot of people versus who you're actually meant to be targeting, right? And the Supreme Court is expected to make a final decision by the end of June or July?
That's what they said. In terms of arguments, it could take longer, but as of now, the defense said that they are expecting an official ruling by June or July. They're hoping, and they're very, very hopeful, that this will kind of resolve and they will win, because it's just antithetical to what it is to being an American if we change the 14th Amendment, I believe. And I don't want to see that value of people who struggle and come here, or my ancestors as a Black American, someone who fought and died for the right to be called a citizen. I don't wish to see that overturned. And I think there are a lot of good people fighting to make sure that does not happen.
Well, Ariama Long, political reporter with the New York Amsterdam News, thank you so much for your reporting, your insight, and for bringing this information to our audience here on The Breakdown.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, coming up after the break, in case you missed it on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Candace Kelly steps in, takes on the epidemic of domestic violence, breaking down how survivors can escape, what healing can really look like, and the legal realities that so many of us are facing. Stay with us.
said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat, so they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
If in this country right now, you have people get up in the morning and the only thing they can think about is how many people they can hurt, and they got the power, that's the time for mourning.
For better or worse, what makes America special, it's that legal system that's supposed to protect minorities from the tyranny of the majority.
We are at a point of a moral emergency. We must raise a voice of outrage. We must raise a voice of compassion. And we must raise a voice of unity.
We are not in a crisis of party versus party. We are in a crisis of civilization, a human rights crisis, and a crisis of democracy itself. And guess what? You've been chosen to make sure that those that would destroy, those that would hate, don't have the final say, and they don't ultimately win.
What's happening? This is your man, Motown recording artist Kim. You are watching the Black Star Network.
Well, in our Black and Missing segment, we're asking for your help in finding 16-year-old Eleanor Harris, who's been missing since Monday, April 6th. She was last seen in Stockton, California, wearing a cheetah print bonnet and pajama pants. If you know anything about where she could be, please contact police. The number, 209-937-8323. Well, in case you missed it on Roland Martin Unfiltered last night, Candace Kelly is still filling in for Roland Martin, who continued to address the epidemic of fatal domestic violence, discussing ways to escape violent situations and what healing actually looks like for survivors. The show also covered the legal aspects of domestic abuse.
We're going to be talking about how to remove yourself from a violent situation and then how to heal yourself once you are out. Joining me now are Robin May, a licensed professional counselor, and Alma Davis. She is the founder and CEO of the Alma Domestic Violence Foundation. Thank you, both of you, for being with us today. I first want to start with you, Alma, and I know that the process of actually removing yourself from a situation, we know it's a case-by-case basis because it all looks so different. But based upon your experience, are there some same through lines with the cases that you've dealt with and what you know about the best way to get out?
Yeah, so we first have to set the stage that when someone is leaving, that's the most dangerous part of being in a domestic violence relationship is the leaving part. And so what we want to do is try to provide clients or people in those situations with steps to actually prepare to leave. So some of the things that we first talk about is having a safety plan, meaning it's thought out. There are some things that you've put in place, like one, having a copy of your driver's license, maybe hidden somewhere, a copy of Social Security cards, birth certificates, things of that nature, even down to having things about your children, right, hidden. Some things else we would tell someone is to have a code word, meaning you've talked to your safe space if you have that, whether that's an organization that's helped you put a safety plan together, whether that's a close relative, and even down to your children. Hey, if I give you this code word, that means it is time to go. One, either that means I'm in danger, or two, that means it's time to go. So either way, that is an immediate action. We would tell people to also do things like change your route, right? Don't be so predictable, so that that abuser can't find you. So really think through those things and plan that out. Another great tip that we like to share with people is, if you are able to call an organization like ours that a case manager can actually walk you through those things, that would be the most beneficial, because number one, as the case manager, we are trained to give you things to think about that you haven't thought about, like understanding that, listen, when you get ready to leave, things may escalate. So we want to help you sort of navigate through when is the right time to leave, right? Number one, if the person is not home, right? If that's an optimal time to leave, if that person is gone to work or something like that. So if you have an agency that does this, we can walk you through those things. But if that's not the case, even like going to our website or the National Domestic Violence Hotline, you can see an actually safety plan, and we'll ask you those types of questions to help you sort of get prepared to go. It's never an easy thing to leave, but it's one of the most powerful things that you can do once you've made the decision that, hey, it's time to go.
What do you tell your children who might be of age, they actually understand what's going on? What does that conversation look like in terms of the secrecy of all of this and the planning? There's a lot of trust, and you have children that are scared and still might love, well, they probably do love their father, right? We know that there's that.
Right.
How do you have those conversations, and what do good ones look like?
So I would say, so we just don't exclude women. Sometimes that abuser can be a woman as well.
Yes.
And so whether it's male or female, what you want to relate to those children is, listen, hey, mommy loves you. Mommy or daddy loves you. I need you to trust me. You know, it has not been a good situation, right? And mom or dad, we want to keep you safe. So when mommy gives you a word, I don't want you to ask me questions. I want you to trust mommy that means it's time to go. And when it's time to go, that means let's be quiet. Definitely can't tell other people that we are planning this. And again, it goes to, you got to figure out what's age appropriate, right? Someone that's in high school or middle school will understand more that, hey, when I give you this word, let's go. I made a safety plan, a safety key. If I call you and use this word, let's go. Versus a little one, right, who, trust me, understands to a point that they know that it has not been an easy environment to live in. Because one of the things that happens with children, they deal with secondary trauma, right? And so if they've been in that environment, they know how that makes them feel. And it's having that age-appropriate conversation, say, hey, you know how you don't like to see mommy cry, or daddy doesn't like to see you cry, because sometimes you feel we're getting hurt. Well, I want to change that situation. And you have to sort of have that age-appropriate to help them understand that this is a happy place that we're going to, it may even be that hey, we're going to take a little vacation, but it's going to be a surprise for daddy. So we can't tell anybody, so right. Those types of things. And that's what case managers can sort of help you think through based on the age appropriation.
Yeah, obviously, this sounds very familiar. I'm sorry, Robin, this sounds very familiar. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about your advice, what you would give some? We are going to eventually talk about the healing process, but I'm certain that you would echo what has already been spoken and more.
Absolutely. And I think one of the consistent messaging that I would say to a woman is what Alma said. This is not going to be that there is a price that she will be paying for her safety, but the other side of that is her life. And so I would keep stressing, normalizing. This is the key. This is the key. Normalizing that the distress she's feeling, the angst that she's feeling, the fear that she's feeling, that's absolutely normal and that's a part of the process. The other dynamic I would say in the middle of a woman choosing safety is what Alma said, of course, having a safety word or a safety plan, but also having at least one person, one additional person who is aware of the plan, one person that even if it has to be somebody out of town, at least one other person who is aware so that you're not navigating it alone. And then the third thing I would add as a therapist, to make sure you're staying in contact with your therapist. And I would even advise to make sure that the children have a therapist, because a therapist can also partner with you in it. Here's one of the things about intimate partner violence or domestic violence. It feels so lonely. It feels so lonely. But the truth is, there are so many people who are just waiting. In my world, I call it waiting on ready. They're waiting to support you. And so if there's someone, if there's someone watching this right now, it feels so lonely. But I promise there are a team of people who want to rally around you.
I heard you. You can chime in.
Yeah, I think she is spot on. And when she talks about that team of people, it's important to help people understand that when we're getting you prepared, right, there are also some other things that you probably have not even thought about, like your animal. You know, a lot of times people don't want to leave a domestic violence situation because of that pet, because what goes hand in hand with domestic violence is a lot of times the pets are abused. But if you reach out to an organization like ours or Partnership Against Domestic Violence, we can help you because we have contacts with shelters that will keep your animal for up to 3 months at no cost to make sure you are safe. A lot of times, because this will be, again, this is a fast moving moment. So the more planning that you can do would be, optimal. But we want to remind you of things, key things like make sure you're documenting the bruising. If you have bruising, writing things down, if you can, putting it in a safe place, your medicines. Because a lot of people don't think about when you're on the run, you're on the go, you don't even think about that medicine that may be needed. Making extra copies of keys. So we want to support you as you make this brave decision to leave. And the more that we can help you, I totally agree, having a therapist that can help sort of walk you through the emotions that you're feeling, because it is a big step. Right? It's one of the most important and largest steps you may make in literally saving your life. And I mean, literally saving your life. So having that support system, having that community that can not only hold your hand, but give you tangible things is so essential and so important.
And what you do, Alma, is it that somebody reaches out to you and then you have almost like a consultation with them to lead them through a plan so that they can carry out that plan of action? Is that how it works when someone reaches out to your organization?
Yes, they can call us either directly on our 800 number line. And the first thing we do is an intake. So that first step is someone reassuring you that you're safe. It is okay to talk to us. You can give as much information as you want or as much information as you don't want to give. And then we partner you with a case manager. And that case manager hears you out. That case manager is trained to give you all the different tools and essential things that you may need. You may think you're calling just for a safety plan when that case manager has identified, well, no, we need to get you emergency shelter, or no, we need to make sure you have a ride, or no, we need to set up where you have baby food or the things that you need, or a care kit when you leave. So yes, those are the steps that we take. We will match you with that case manager. We hold your hand all the way through the process. We don't just give you a phone number to call if there is someone that is not in our area, because we service all over the United States. We will find that close partner that will walk you through. And then we're going to continue to check in on you. Whether we've partnered you with someone else, whether we do a 30-day check-in, plan. We do a 60-day, and then we continue to identify, we involve you in your case planning, right? What do you need to make you successful? If that's housing, if that's you need a job, what are those things? If that's therapy, we do have licensed therapists on staff. We even have a legal department, legal advocates that will help you with filing a TPO. We go to court with you, right? Making sure that you know that you are not alone in this process.
Mm-hmm. And by TPO, you mean temporary protective order.
Temporary protective order, yes. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, I think what's interesting in a lot of women that I speak to, that they don't know the time that it does take. It doesn't happen overnight. You do have to plan quite a bit, Robin, in terms of getting it together so that something doesn't go awry. You might have to save money. You might have to make sure that things are in order. And you just have to kind of get it all together in order to make a strategic plan. You might have to do a little bit of acting in the meantime, but take the time to get the plan right.
Absolutely. I love that you even said giving women the grace to know that it might take them first time to build up. I'm so careful to say courage because that can imply that someone who stays isn't being courageous, but that's the best way for us to frame it. Let's say this, an additional level of courage that it might take time to build that up. And then also, as you just indicated, if you have to play the game to get through, do that as you're making the plan. Remember, you don't have to, or you don't need to announce what your decision is. And if you have to play nice over that period of time, play nice. And also another indicator, another aspect of this that I think is important for us to consider is that even if it has not gotten to the level of physical violence, if you are seeing behavior that is controlling, if you're seeing anger that's getting out of control, if you are seeing raised voices, if you're feeling isolated, those are warning signs as well. So we don't want to minimize even the non-violent abuse that can take place.
Yeah, exactly. And often that nonviolent abuse, I mean, it can be done in front of people. You don't even recognize it, and it's still just as impactful when someone's demeaning you out in public or using finances to control you, or your kids to, make you look like a bad mother or father. We are going to talk later this evening with someone else about the legal component of it. We know that that's another layer. Another layer of this is on the other side in terms of getting out. Now you are outside of a domestic violent relationship, and the healing needs to begin in some way. I want to start with you, Robin, by just asking you, what does the beginning of that healing process look like? Because I find that a lot of women, they certainly don't think that their instinct skills are sharpened enough. They're normally on hyper, vigilant, kind of looking at everybody, that everybody might be a threat. And so their whole nervous system is kind of reacting differently because of what they have just come from. How does that healing begin?
It's interesting. I'm so glad that you said the word nervous system, because once a woman has navigated the pain and the trauma, because we need to call it what it is, the pain and the trauma of domestic abuse, it literally changes how your nervous system functions. I'm sure most of the viewers have heard of the term Maslow's hierarchy of need. Often when I'm working with a woman who is rebounding after any type of traumatic romantic relationship, I often point to that because a lot of people learned about that in Psychology 101 in high school. But Maslow's hierarchy of need talks about the stages to self-actualization, feeling good about yourself. And that's a great place to start post leaving a violent situation. When we think about that, it is, first of all, your safety, just your basic physiological needs. Are those in place? And then your physical safety, your financial safety. And then we can start looking at love and belonging and esteem and building yourself up. And that takes time, because often after you have been in a domestic situation, any little thing, your trauma response is heightened. I'm sure many of you have heard a song and it takes you right back to where you were when you first heard that song. That's what happens with trauma. That's what happens with domestic abuse. The survivor could smell something She could smell something and have a physiological reaction because it's taking her right back to that place. And so the first thing I'm doing when I'm working with a woman is helping her rebuild her safety in her body, rebuild her trust of her senses and her trust in knowing what's okay for her and what's not. And let me tell you something that's often missed. I'm also helping that woman, watch this, because when a woman comes to me after being in a traumatic situation, she often second guesses her own decisions. And what often happens unintentionally, she will latch on to the next person that feels safe, even if it's her therapist. And so what I am often doing is slowly helping that woman rebuild her trust in her own decision making. Rebuild her trust to be able to say, I don't want this. I do want that. I want to go here. I don't want to go there. Giving her practice in owning her choices is a huge part of the process. And then I want to share this because it has worked really powerful with a lot of the women that I work with. I encourage women to start envisioning, visualizing exposure therapy to the woman they want to be. Who is the woman that you want to be? What does whole look like to you? What does healing look like to you? And what would that woman do? Watch this, that you are not doing. When I tell you that exercise, it gives me chills every time I watch a woman do it. Who is the woman that you want? What does whole look like? What does a healed version of you look like? And how can we start practicing that version of you until you believe it? So I want to give you an example. The woman might tell me, well, I always wanted to go back to school, and he told me I couldn't go back to school. The topic. Let's just start looking at YouTube. Start looking at YouTube videos on that topic. When you come back to session, tell me something new that you discovered on that subject that you want to learn about. Because I want you to start embodying the woman that you want to be. Here's the thing. The only way through is to go through. And that means going through the difficult portion of releasing what occurred and becoming who you want to be.
Right, because these situations, they can change your whole personality to an outsider looking in. You really shift to another person because you're always in defense. I do want to talk about the healing process, but then what does that look like when you are co-parenting? That is exceptionally difficult. And from the both of you, I wanted to know, how do you co-parent with this person if they don't go behind bars and maybe they go through an anger management course, but they still are allowed to see the children? I want to start with you, Alma, and then we'll go to you, Robin.
That is something very difficult that a lot of our clients have to face and have to deal with because you're right. If that person has not been served or has not been put behind bars, a lot of times we will see where that abuser will try to gain custody of those children or even paint the survivor out to be the abusive parent, right? And so some of the things that we have to focus on and work through is even the thought process and the thinking of the survivor. We've seen so many times where the survivor will say, oh, well, it's fine for me to meet that person at the school or at the daycare for them to see the child because they wouldn't do anything to hurt the child. And of course, we've seen incidents even in the news where that abuser has showed up and not only hurt, killed, or might have, killed the survivor, but even hurt that child. So one of the things that we try to do, and I love what Robin said about giving choices, is making them feel empowered to clearly understand the circumstances, right? What may or may not happen, but helping them think through, let's look at what if this happens? And like I said, we're wanting them to empower to make the right choice. But if not, we want to help you understand, well, what are some of the backup choices that have? Do you have to meet them alone? Do you have to meet them at the daycare? If you're going to do that, is that daycare aware that this parent is coming up to see them? If there has been a legal process or a TPO, we try to, which is a temporary protective order, we try to encourage them to allow the law to help sort of navigate that, right? Meeting with it might be someone that unfortunately, like outside agencies have gotten involved and they are that neutral party that's there. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our client or that survivor is safe and their children are safe, because if you pay attention to the Amber Alerts, over 90% of those Amber Alerts come all from, when the children are missing, they're coming from domestic violence or family violence situations, right? So using the skills, but again, empowering that survivor to sort of think, but not be so easy to trust that abuser, right? So that they're making some concrete decisions that will still keep them safe, but keep their children safe.
Well, tonight's topic will focus on coping with the stresses that impact the family dynamics. And a Black third-year law student at Texas Tech University School of Law is suing the university after its honor council recommended she be reprimanded for allegedly celebrating the death of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk. Tune in tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern, only on the Black Star Network. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today. And we want to remind you that your support is absolutely critical to the work that we do here. And you can support us via Stripe code. You can also help us out with credit cards. Take a look at the screen right now. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo's RM Unfiltered, Zelle at RolandSMartin.com, Rolling at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And if you're old school, checks and money orders, they're all payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196 in Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. And know that you can also check us out online, the Black Star Network. We are your source for stories that matter to our entire community. And again, we want to thank you for joining us today on The Breakdown. We'll be back tomorrow with more news that matters.